guys, welcome back to our advisor interview series, Just Advisor Things. I am so excited for today's interview. We have Stephen Williams from thecoverartist.com. I literally refer to him as like a wizard when it comes to yearbook cover designs. And so we're going to talk through the process that he takes to design covers, some tips for when you will go into a cover design appointment, and just talk generally about some really cool options for yearbook covers. So thank you so much for joining us today, Stephen. How are you
I
today?
am great. I am so excited to be here and very very humbled because you have this powerhouse roster of brilliant and amazing advisors, and then there's like me, like
No,
one of
we're so
these things
excited.
is not like the other. So
Well, it is
it's
a little bit of
very
a different
cool.
interview because it's not about advising, but I'm so excited because I get so many questions about covers and what I put on it, what's required to have on it, how do I design it? So it's a good perspective that we need to have.
I can answer most of those questions with 85% accuracy, I assure you.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about your history in design and how you got into the very specific niche of yearbook cover design.
Okay, I don't want to take up too much of the time. But when I was 6 years old, I no
Back in my day.
back in when I was a child. No, I started my career in advertising. I was an art director and creative director for print and TV ads in Dallas, and it was a great job. And then 9/11 happened, and it wasn't a great job. And so I moved back home to start my own design studio. And right at that same time, I got a call from someone who worked in marketing at then Taylor Publishing.
Mhm.
And they said, hey, we do this thing where we send artists to workshops to design covers. And she's like, I know you work super fast because I had worked with her at an agency before. She's like, I know you work super fast. I think you'd be great with the kids. Could we put you on this list? And I was like, yeah, put me on the list. I just started my own company. I have no idea where my next paycheck is coming from. Like,
Right.
absolutely, I'll do anything you want me to do. So I did my first workshop in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in May of 2015. Or no, I'm sorry, 2003. May of 20,
I was gonna say 2015. It was way
Yeah,
before
no,
that.
2003. May of 2003, I did my very first workshop, and I loved it. Like, it was just so stinking cool. Like, so different than advertising, so much fun. And I was just like, I want to do more of that. So I think Taylor sent me on the road to like 15 different cities that summer, and it was just a whirlwind. And I was like, I'm gonna follow this as far as I can because it's so much better for my soul than advertising was. Because in advertising, we would spend months making a television commercial that was 30 seconds long, and we would have fights, and we would have idiots and egos and like just all kinds of crazy things. And so then that 30 seconds would only exist on the air for 30 days, and then we do the whole process over again. And it was just, I mean, it's a cool job when you're young, but I was just like, this is so much better. Now I sit down for someone with an hour, and we make something that is going to last
Forever.
in their homes and in the school's library for years until the robot uprising like incinerates all
Right.
printed word. Like, those books are going to be around, and the students are just super grateful, and the advisors are really gracious. Like, it's just so great. So it feeds my ADHD brain. Like, I only have to work on one project for 1 hour.
Yeah.
It's different every hour on the hour, and it just worked so much better for me that I followed that as much as I could. And props to then Taylor Publishing, now Balfour. They were able to build a career out of that. Like, they put me to work and kept me busy working on some of their key accounts for throughout the entire country. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. I've been doing it for 21 years now, and I want to do it for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, and you are so good at it. I mean, the covers you have, you guys go look at his website. Like, they're just, sometimes I refer to his website just to be like, go look for inspiration here because these are some really great covers. And I have definitely seen lots of them being emulated, because they become popular trends kind of because of something you've created with the kids, which is so cool. Um,
It's crazy. Like, it's weird to see. I was having lunch with a friend of mine in Dallas, and he was telling me that his daughter is on yearbook staff in high school, and she's like, "Oh yeah," and I didn't work with them, but she's like, "Let me show you our cover," and she pulled up a direct rip off of something
and
I've
you're
done. Now,
like,
this is a friend of mine from advertising. He's like, "Oh my god, you plagiarized my former art director," and I'm like, "Dude, it is not a big deal. It happens all the time. I think it's hilarious."
Yeah,
But
it is
yeah,
an industry where there's lots of borrowing, which is funny because we teach like, no plagiarism and copyright and all that sort of stuff. But in the yearbook world, it's very common to have
there
things
is nothing
borrowed.
new under the yearbook sun. It's at
Yeah,
least very hard to come up with something brand new. But I
right.
try, anytime someone wants me to emulate something, we try to make it better or try to
Yeah,
make it more proprietary, like try to find a way to make it their own for sure.
yeah.
But that doesn't always happen that way.
Right. It's true. Sometimes it's more challenged, I'm sure, than other times.
Right. And,
So,
I mean, you don't want, if you're going to put things out there, you don't have control over who borrows or steals it. So having my stuff out there and having it copied, that's fine. I'm totally
it's
okay with that.
flattering. It means that you did a
Yeah.
good job. So,
Yeah. No, we're not pursuing litigation at this time.
good to know. Good to know.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Okay, well, the first burning question that I get a lot, and I wanted to ask right away, is normally when I'm doing a workshop, I like coach people in the very beginning of it because we have cover sessions all throughout, and I try to tell staffs what to walk into a cover session with. And I usually tell them things like have some ideas, have some sort of cohesive idea if you can, and then, be able to communicate with the cover artist, like talk to you and give feedback, tell them what you like, what you don't like, because they can't read your mind, right?
Yeah.
Especially most cover art sessions, I'm assuming you do now, are virtual. And
Yeah.
so, what advice would you give to a yearbook staff that is about to head into a yearbook cover artist appointment? Like, what do they need to bring and what do they need to do while they're there?
Food helps. If you can bring candy or a burrito, if you can bring a burrito, that's definitely going to help a lot. I know that. So like the the impetus for this whole thing was workshops, right? Like obviously every publisher has an artist that will make your cover for you in absentia and then send you the design. But my career started in workshops where you have like an hour. So
Mhm.
anything you can do to maximize that hour is incredibly helpful. The time of year changes what people have ready for me, right? Like
Mhm.
in the summer, people might have a theme, but they don't exactly know what fonts or colors they want to use, and they'd like to kind of just explore that during the cover session. In the fall or winter, like they've been working on pages and spreads. So these are our colors, these are our fonts, this is our theme. We've been using this. Can you gift wrap it?
Right.
So depending on the time of year, like the more answers you can have, the more details you can give is good. The best thing for me is to have a bad sketch. If you can bring in a bad sketch of what you think you want, we can start with that. But I've had students I've had people bring in fully formed ideas and covers and be like, you just want me to put this in a template for you? Like
Right.
we're good. We can make it a little bit better. We can tighten up some of the screws. But yeah, I would definitely have a theme in mind. I'm good at helping with themes, but I'm not the guy for that job because I can kind of think about how it would roll through the inside of the book. But people who have made the insides of books, I only do the outsides, right? So people
Right.
who have made the insides are much better at advising you on how your theme could be rolled out through the book. So I can do that. You don't want to pay me to do that. You want to pay me to make the cover. so,
Right.
so I don't want to, I would feel bad about if we spend 15 minutes on theme, that's 15 minutes less that we don't get to work on the cover. And I will be guiding you towards themes that I know I can execute in 45 minutes or less at that point because we want to make
Exactly.
sure that we're done. So yeah, the more fully formed ideas you can bring, the better. If you have an inspiration piece, absolutely bring that. If you have, I've even had an advisor. I have had a session where the advisor kept talking about, she's like, we have a knot list and we're gonna, like, we know we have that, we're gonna bring our knot list and then we're gonna go through that. And I'm like, I don't understand what that means. She's like, well, we don't know what we want, but we know that it's not this and it's not this and it's not this. And I was like, that's genius. Even that is helpful. Like,
Right.
tell me what you don't want and I'll at least stay away from that. So yeah, any little bit can help, but a bad sketch and a theme is good enough to get started. A bad sketch, a theme, fonts, and colors is even better. But we can work with very little or we can work with a lot either way.
Yeah.
But you get the most. The more you bring, the more you maximize the time, and then we get to really finesse what the design is and talk about how that's going to work inside the book and things like that.
Yeah. I think that's such an important point to think about too is you only have an hour, and
Yeah.
so let's maximize what you can get done in that hour. And typically it's already a crunched, session. Like there's it takes a lot to put together a yearbook cover and you do work very fast, but let's not waste time, with
Yeah,
stuff that you can do outside of the session.
and it's a little weird that it's an hour, right? Like that again, that's from the workshop thing. Like we are going to give each school an hour. But the benefit of that now is that obviously if you want to spend more money and take more time, we can, but we can also get a lot of things knocked off of your to-do list in 1 hour, right?
Yeah.
You can come in with almost nothing, and then an hour later your cover deadline is met. You know your fonts, you know your colors, you know the graphic elements that you're going to carry through the book. Like we solve a lot of problems in that 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like one of my favorite signs in any yearbook classroom is the sign that says you're never done, you're just out of time. That's kind of the mantra we work. Like we can add more time, but we're at this point, we're out of time. This is our deadline. We are at this point, and hopefully because everyone has been watching and participating in the process, there's not a need to go back and forth by email. There's not a need to like, oh, let's sit on it and think about it. Sometimes there's a need to show it to other people and get approval and stuff like that. But since most of the decision makers have been involved, then it's I'd say 95% of the time, an hour and we're done. Like we're done. There's always ways to make things better. There's always ways to keep messing with things, but at some point you got to pull the trigger and say, we're going with this. We got deadlines. This is what we're rolling with. So
Right.
It works. It's a system that has started in the grind of a workshop and continues to work to this day outside of that in a virtual space.
Yeah. And also with the school schedule, I mean, sometimes it's hard to get kids in a room, for an hour anyway. So it's good that it's a fast process and efficient.
Yeah.
So I've seen some schools come in with like multiple themes and they have, kids on different factions that, they have different opinions. And then the advisor has another opinion. And they're like, our cover artist will figure it out. Like, what do you do in those situations?
I die a little on the inside and then I rally and then we make something work. It's hard. It happens. I think it's important to understand that like even, obviously your yearbook isn't going to make everybody happy, especially if it's not going to make everyone happy in the same classroom at the same time. I always advise against like combining the two themes and like, let's just, a camel is a horse that was designed by a committee, right? So you don't want to just merge everything and then have this kind of twisted, convoluted idea. But that's kind of one of the life lessons that you learn in yearbook, right? Is compromise and being able to kind of get behind a project that maybe you don't have a total amount of buy-in in. But you're going to do it because you're kind of part of a team and you got to make this publication and the deadline isn't going to just magically get extended because you couldn't make up your mind. Yep. But it is hard. Like when you're in that situation and these people they're nice. Everyone that's doing a yearbook is working really hard. So you want to give them the most that you can. But, when you've got two editors that are, an editor and a co-editor that don't agree, that can make things really, really tricky.
Yeah.
And sometimes I am brought in as the peacekeeper to say, well, I think it should be this, and I would go with this for this reason, and this reason. If you guys can get on board with that, we will move forward and we will make this happen and you will have that problem solved. But
right.
Oftentimes every once in a while I'll end a session with, all right, well, when you guys figure it out, give me a call back.
Let me know.
We'll pick, and there's not really enough time to do like, can we do both of them and see it? Like, there's not really enough time to do two full-blown theme and ideas. Sometimes there is if they're really simple cover designs, but it's hard to like let everybody see every option before they commit to it. We kind of have to like do it in stages and make sure that we're all seeing the same thing and understand like, okay, we saw this and it maybe worked or didn't. We saw this and we didn't think it worked for this reason. Now we see this. Now we're building on things. If you only see the end product and you don't know what happened to get there, then you might have some opinions about how it should be. But if you were there from the beginning and you saw it go, then you're like, okay, well, that's how we ended up there. And everyone tends to agree a little bit more when they see the whole process.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of schools or staff, students, individual students that did disagree, go to a cover session and then be like, no, I'm sold. I get it. Like I love it now, because they
Right.
see the evolution. So I think that's
Yeah.
important to keep in
Yeah.
mind. But from the advisor perspective, I would say that it is helpful if the advisor can corral those ideas first, like if they can kind of guide those conversations with the students and get them to at least some sort of consensus before they go in to meet with you, because, again, we only have an hour, like let's use that time wisely. So advisors that are watching, like that would be something that you can do to help design your cover, is get those ideas at least like to some sort of cohesive, theme at least, and then you can take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and if they and also be open, right? Like if you're like, we have this idea, but we kind of want to see what else could be done, then that's also helpful. Because I am not going to undo anybody's hard work. If I can avoid it, if there's something that you want and I see merit in it, I'm not gonna like, oh,
Yeah.
but have you considered doing the opposite of that? I'm not going to like wreck a whole bunch of plans. But if something comes up, I'm like, oh man, it'd be really cool. Have you considered this? It's some people are open to that, some people aren't. Sessions go, every advisor is different, every classroom
Yeah.
is different, every yearbook is like, some are competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And some, I've had some advisors be like, look, if we don't have it in school colors with our mascot on the front, we will not
Yeah.
sell a single copy of this thing. So I don't care what your fancy idea is. I want,
Right. And
I
you're like,
want what
okay,
I
cool. A
want.
tiger with blue and yellow. Like, yeah.
Exactly. Here we go. We're going with that. So, I try to be accommodating. For any of the advisors watching, my job is to make your life easier, not harder, right? I'm not trying to do anything that was going to upset the balance or upset the workflow. I want to make sure that we're, if you're just starting, I want to like rocket launch you into
Right.
productivity. And if you've already been going, I want to like gift wrap all the really cool spreads that you guys have already done, and at all stages in between. So
Oh, that's such
yeah,
a beautiful way of saying it. Gift wrap them. I love that.
yeah, I'm a really glorified gift wrapper. That's what I do.
Wow.
Yeah. I just wrap packages all day long.
That's awesome.
So.
Okay, so what about like feedback during the session? Like I have a lot of kids that get really shy, or over Zoom, they just sit in the back and they say nothing, but they, I don't know, secretly have an opinion. What would you say you need from the staff when you're actively designing?
Feedback is great. I would say if you sit quietly while the design is being done, then you should probably sit quietly when the book comes out.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah, like if you didn't speak up during the creation of it, that was your chance. And I try really hard to make sure that everyone understands, like, you are not going to hurt my feelings if you tell me you don't like this. Like, really, the only way you're going to hurt my feelings is if you let me design a cover that you don't like. Like,
Right.
if you think that I'm doing this because it's my design and my creation and my ego and all that, then that's way wrong, because I am really trying to make a bunch of kids happy. Like, like,
Yeah.
what a great job, right? Like, that's so fun. I'm not trying to win any awards for myself with this stuff. So yeah, if the more feedback you can give, the better. If you see me going in a direction you don't want to be going in, stop me before it goes too far,
Mhm.
because that's time that we want to keep going the direction that you envision. And that's, I think a lot of what I do is kind of like the police mugshot, like sketch artist guys. Like, okay, describe the eyes of the attacker. Like, what were they, round? Were they like, what are you looking for? What do you want to see on this final page? And I just ask a lot of questions and pull that out. So if I'm not getting feedback, I will try to ask. And sometimes it's like, do you like green or do you like blue?
Right.
Okay, we're gonna go with blue. That way, there's that buy-in that people can go, okay, well, I had options, and those are the options. These are what I picked, and this is what we got. So that's it. But if you sit quietly, then sit quietly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that learning how to communicate to and give that feedback is a skill that, takes time to develop, but the cover appointment is the perfect opportunity to get some practice. Like, put your opinion out there respectfully, kindly, to especially to your other staff
Absolutely.
members and to your artists. But,
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
speak up, because also you have an hour. Like, it's kind of final after that, unless you spend more money and take more time. But ideally we want it done in that hour. So
Ideally, yes. For
yeah,
everybody's sake. Like just
right.
and how great is that to be able to be like, okay, well, we have nothing, and then an hour later we're gonna have this huge thing done, and hopefully everyone agrees on it, and we're off and running. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's to the benefit of everyone that we maximize that hour and just get to work and start making pages.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, though, the other reason why it's good to have that done in the hour is you were very busy, and so getting booking time with you is precious. It's commodity. So you can't always just go back and be like, oh, let's extend it an hour. Like there's someone behind you. There's someone tomorrow. Like it might be several weeks before you can meet the second time.
Yeah.
So walk us through a little bit, like a brand new advisor. They're not really sure the cadence of yearbook production yet. At what point should they start making sure that or thinking about their cover and have their cover designs like in an ideal world? Maybe I know every publisher is different,
Yeah.
but what would you recommend in terms of production with our yearbook cover?
Um, like I said, since everyone is different and the schedules are what they are, and every publisher has a different deadline. It's kind of I'm willing to say it's kind of up to you as far as like when you want to think about the cover. In a perfect world, I I don't know. I don't know if there is a perfect world. So why would we go with that?
Yeah, right. And we
I don't
wish.
know if that exists, right? I mean, I really do think that for some people it works better to get everything done and then wrap it up at the end and be like, we want our cover based on what we've already done. Some people don't start anything till they have a cover design, and they need that. Like they have to have that to move forward. If you're a brand new advisor, I would say don't be in that rut because it could be really hard to get started. If you're waiting on one thing before you get started on your design and your theme, then that's probably going to put you in a bad situation at some point.
Right.
Because cover artists aren't always available, or the cover artist may do something that you don't like. So definitely don't wait. I've never been a yearbook advisor, but it seems like a very, very hard job. So if you're a brand new advisor, start working on pages, start working on taking photos, do all that stuff. But the cover can kind of happen whenever you are comfortable doing it, and then
Before
that
your
will also
deadline.
yeah, before your deadline, but that will also determine like what the session looks like. So I would just say if you're considering using me, I would book an appointment before you ever have any idea that you're ready,
Right.
because the spots, once school starts, the spots fill up really, really fast, and it is really, really hard to get in. So if you're a brand new advisor, you don't know what to do, book an appointment for a date that's comfortably off for you to feel like you have time to talk with your staff about it. And then that's another deadline that you have. Like that's kind of a built-in accountability. Like we have to be ready to design our cover by this date. And then you've got something to strive for. And then because that's a huge deadline. That's usually earlier than a lot of things. For some
Right.
publishers, it's October. For some publishers, it's December. For some publishers, it's later. But you want to make sure that you are not getting yourself in a bind where you missed a cover deadline and you're paying penalties and all that stuff with your publisher for not having your cover done on time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would
Especially if you're
do
gonna
it.
pay penalties for deadline missing, like have it be for your kids' content. Because the cover, I feel like that's one thing versus like 20
Right.
pages.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And a lot of that content, like you have to make it as it happens. So this is something that can be a little bit more fluid, but you definitely want to get ahead of it and not. And again, I work almost year round, so I am definitely working with people who are like, we have blown our cover deadline and we need something now. Like,
you're like,
okay, we can
okay.
absolutely do that.
Do
Not a
you
problem.
ever do you have like templated covers that you can be like, pick one, or are they all custom?
They're all custom to some degree. Absolutely. I mean, I've never deleted a file. I mean, since I've been
Yeah.
in
So you have
design
them to
school,
refer to, I
I
guess.
have them. We can pull them up and we can start with that. And that does, like, sometimes that saves a lot of time, right? We
Yeah.
know that. So we can spend a lot of time making it even better. If we're going to just open up an old file, I'm a better designer now than I was when I did that file. So we can do something different
Yeah.
to make that better. But sometimes people like what they like and they want it exactly as they saw it, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I definitely don't really work on templates, and I've never really found a way to like make a generic cover available for you to
Yeah.
download and modify. Like there's not really a good way to do that.
Yeah.
So even if you wanted something that was pre-designed, we still need to spend that hour. We still want to make it your own. we still want to improve it. So there's, it's just a way that has worked to keeps everything looking a little fresher and updating things with the times. You probably don't have access to the fonts that you see in that cover, so we're gonna have to change the fonts to your fonts. You probably have different colors. Like there's a lot of things that will change, so we might as well change other stuff too and
Yeah.
make it better, make it more
Make it your
dynamic.
own. I think that
Yeah,
that's also
absolutely.
just journalistically a good practice. Like you shouldn't, I mean, obviously there's reasons why publishers have ready to go covers for budget, for time. Every situation is different. But if you have the opportunity to design your cover, do it. Like, it
Yeah.
should be student created. I mean, obviously the artist, you're here to help come to life, but the idea, the concept, should be a student idea originated. So,
Yeah, and there's two things I want to say about that. One is that speaking of, if you are the type of school who has previously picked from the catalog of your publisher's available covers, talk to your publisher before you use me or another artist, because oftentimes those pre-made covers exist to save you money.
mhm.
So you are probably getting some kind of a discount for picking one of the pre-made covers. So if you're like, oh, well, I want to pay Steven to design my cover, your publisher might also be like, well, we're going to charge you for designing your own cover because you have been picking your own cover. You've been picking from our pre-made covers.
Just check your
Um,
contract and
yeah,
agreement.
check your
Mhm.
contract. Make sure that you have the ability. And it's not going to cost you. There are no hidden charges if you design
Mhm.
your own cover. But the second thing is like that's a good life skill to learn. Like I obviously as much of the yearbook that can be done by students should be done by students, but it's a good life skill to learn to direct somebody to make your vision because you're
Right.
going to be in a position where you're not the person to do it, but you want to tell someone how to do it. That's a good life skill to have. And basically it's for some schools I am the creative director, and for some schools, I am the art director,
Mhm.
right? Right? For some schools, I am telling them where I think the creative vision should go. And for other schools, I am taking their direction and making the cover that they want. It works both ways. I have no preference one way or the other. It's whatever works best for them. But that is still a good skill to hone when you're young, is to say, like, well, I talked them through and I had to say, I didn't
Mhm.
like this, or that I would really like this to be a different way, and learn tactful and graceful ways of saying those
Mhm.
things that aren't just like make it blue.
Yeah, literally.
So yeah, I think both of those have merit, and I would definitely make sure that if you've never hired a cover artist, if you're new to that, the step one should always be to check with your publisher and make sure that like everyone's cool with that,
Yeah.
and that it's not going to put you in any kind of financial jeopardy that you're unaware of.
Yeah. And most of the time, if a cover is something that you want to invest in, there's other ways to save on your contract that you can compensate for. So, it's definitely a good investment in your program and in your book because, I mean, people do buy books based on their cover. And so, especially your books. So, if you have a really cool professional design, and in the past you've chosen something from the catalog or even student drawn, sometimes those are great, but like, sometimes it's just a totally different perspective when, your community sees a professionally designed cover. So
Yeah, and I've always feel like the closest thing yearbook is kind of one of the things that you can do in high school that you can't really do professionally, even though you and I professionally do
right.
yearbook. But there's
There's a very
there's
small community of professional
right.
yearbookers.
It's an industry that serves itself, right? Like
Mhm.
you're not like you can play baseball in high school and then you can play professional baseball, but it
Right.
doesn't feed back into the high school baseball.
Right.
So the closest thing to doing yearbook professionally would be working for a magazine. But the difference in that is that like magazines are fairly disposable and
Mhm.
fairly temporary, and you're making something that is absolutely a historical document and should absolutely be kept in the school library and the front office and every home of every student that bought one for as long as they find it relevant.
Mhm.
So you want the look of it to emulate that. Like we take our inspiration from a lot of these temporary things or a lot of these mass produced things when, the reality is we're making something that is more, hopefully, more of a keepsake and something that will be, treasured by some, trashed by others. Everyone is different, but, I my mom is on she just had her 55th high school reunion and
Oh,
she's got a box of old yearbooks that she takes to that thing and everyone
yeah.
looks through them, and I mean those are more valuable now than they were then, because they're rare and hard to come by and they have pictures of people at a time in their life that has long gone. So it's definitely something that I feel is different from a temporary magazine or even like a book that's, designed to grab your attention from yourself. You want the look of your yearbook to give reverence to the importance that the book is, to the document that it is, in
Right.
my opinion.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think that's such a good insight too, because I think a lot of times, especially a newer advisor or a brand new staff member, they are so used to being the consumer of the yearbook, they don't really make that shift. It takes some time to kind of understand the production side of yearbook and why we create it and how it's a historical document and what goes into making sure it's a historical document versus just something really pretty to look at. And that's a little bit of pressure to design yearbooks for not just your students now in this school year or at the end of the year, but like 20 years from now, 50 years from now, because it's a totally different perspective, and I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm going to be like in 20 years, but I know that I don't remember things that I had in high school. So I'm thankful for those yearbooks. So
And I absolutely could not do that job because my OCD would be like, I want to capture everything. Everything has to be like, we have to have all of it, and we want as much of a record as possible. And my yearbook would be 400 pages and way too
every
copy heavy.
detail.
Yeah, every detail and QR codes everywhere, so you get the full video. Like, I'm just too much of a collector to like let that just do the highlights. It's not how I
Oh, I
roll.
know. And that is quite a challenge to like narrow it down. What's most important?
Right.
Okay, so talking about you mentioned something about how like if students come in with an idea and you kind of have to shift it a little bit. So something that I get a lot when I'm consulting with theme is copywritten themes or things that are like not really yearbook related or like student body related. So like Netflix is really popular right now, Taylor Swift Eras Tour. Like, how do you coach a staff through like dancing around copyright or not making sure that they don't infringe on copyright, or what,
The
or is that part of
best
your role,
thing
or what do you do for that?
it's a fine line, right? Like it's really hard. And I am not a lawyer.
Yeah,
So
same,
I really
same.
so I really can't advise anybody on this, and anything I say would not be legal advice. So my number one advice is just don't do it. Just do something that is completely original and proprietary to you. And that's the thing that I run into with a lot of the Netflix themes and all that, is that any school can do that. Obviously they can. You see them all over the internet all the time. And to my knowledge, I haven't seen any lawsuits from Netflix that are like, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. But I haven't seen it happen. But if you just don't do it, you don't have to worry about that. There are lots of good ideas, and if you're having trouble coming up with one, then there are resources to help you with that. The hard part as an advisor might be selling your students off of that idea. And that's where, again, I'm here to make your job easier, not harder. If it's just easier to do something that looks like Netflix, and they are happy and they are enthusiastic and they run to their computer and make pages and spreads and meet their deadlines because they're so excited about this Netflix theme, oh my God, let's make this Netflix theme. Because I don't want to be the guy that's like shoehorning in something else and then being like, okay, and then the rest of the year sucks because they are making a product that they have
Bummed.
no passion about.
Right.
So do what makes everyone happy, and we'll do it to the best of, like, take inspiration from but not copy any of those proprietary elements. It's a little bit editorial, right? I mean, it is a product that is sold, but it's also editorial. So
And
I
it's
think
also kind of, I usually say it's kind of parody, like, which is
yeah.
not a protected or not a copywritten element. And so you do have a little bit of leeway, maybe, but I do think like if you can take inspiration from those concepts and not just full on, copy the imagery and the look and feel, then I think you're okay. I have seen cease and desist letters from Disney because
Oh, for
they're
sure. Yeah.
very litigious, but like other people, other entities, I don't think we've seen that yet, but it doesn't, I mean, there's no reason to say they couldn't come after yearbooks, even if they are small fish, but
Right.
so if you can, I would say always, like you said, like pull from inspiration and adapt it to your school, but don't go
don't
straight into,
don't mess with Disney.
yeah.
Don't even come close to Disney. Like that's just a bad plan.
They shut down mom and pop Etsy shops all day. Like it's
They
so
shut down
sad.
daycares for having like Mickey Mouse painted on the wall somewhere. Like they
Yeah.
are ridiculous. So yeah,
Which I
just
get
don't
it.
even.
It's their creation, I guess. And Not
Don't
everybody.
mess with the mouse, man.
Don't mess with the
He
mouth.
will he will
Got
come
to
back
pay
to
for that
bite you big
licensing
time.
for sure.
Absolutely. But I mean, and there are tons of, royalty free images that you can buy and that are relatively cheap, $50 maybe, that you can use as a graphic that pay homage to or are inspired by those things that aren't those things.
Hmm.
So I would just look around. Don't do it on Etsy. I mean, Etsy is like,
Yeah.
there are all kinds of copywritten images for sale on Etsy. I would stay away from that as far as like buying and using art from them. I
Hmm.
wouldn't do that. But look at reputable royalty free places like iStock or Getty or Shutterstock. Those are usually pretty good
Adobe stock.
on.
Yeah, I use.
Yeah, do all those and just make sure that you're kind of playing by the rules. And again, you don't want to be a plagiarist.
Right. No.
You don't want
Especially
to
as
do
a
that.
journalist.
Yeah, especially as a journalist, you don't want to be a plagiarist. But obviously, we've all taken we are now all getting our inspiration from the same places.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when I was in high school, and even to some degree when I started this job, the inspiration came from a stack of old magazines in the yearbook classroom that
Yeah.
people were looking through and cutting up, and things would nationwide on a nationwide scale, things would look similar, but they
Hmm.
would not look identical. Now we have TikTok and Pinterest, and things look identical. And I
Hmm.
mean identical nationwide. So
Yeah. Even in
we're
mainstream
seeing
graphic design, like mainstream media, it's all very,
absolutely.
the trends just go together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's become completely homogenized, and which kind of makes it easier for you to stand out on your
Hmm.
own. Like in a world where 500 high schools are doing Netflix, then if you're doing anything other than that, you're kind of going to make some waves and make some noise.
Hmm.
And again, if your staff is only going to make Netflix pages, then that's your theme.
Yeah. If that's what they're sold on.
Make that your theme because they're going to be super excited about it. But I think explaining to them how that process works, that we're all looking at the same place, and I always encourage people to go anywhere but Pinterest
Yeah.
or TikTok or the internet for inspiration. And I think you get better results that way. And I think it teaches kids a way to be creative when it nothing makes me happier than when a school comes in and says, we saw a window display at the mall and we want our cover to look like that. Or
Right.
I saw a paint job on a car that I thought would be really pretty as a yearbook cover. Like those types of things where you're just like really pulling inspiration from somewhere else and be like, oh, this is going to be like a creative process. This is not going to be just a production process. We're going to do something really creative with this. Those are always fun for me. I mean, they're challenging, and in an 8-hour day, sometimes those are like, oh, why didn't you do this in the morning when I still had a
Right.
brain?
I need more coffee.
Right, I need way more caffeine for that. But it always makes me happy when it's like we are really trying to make something unique. Is that probable that everyone is going to do that? No, but it's always nice when there is that one. But if you're a brand new advisor, your job is not to make a groundbreaking yearbook. It is to make a yearbook
So
on
finish that
time,
baby, get it
get
printed, and
that
then
thing done.
survive.
Exactly. And as you grow as an advisor, you can definitely add to your skill sets and really start, flexing those muscles. But learning the actual process that first year or two is crucial.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I talk a lot about the copyright stuff, and I feel kind of bad like crushing dreams because I'm like, you don't want to do it. But
yeah,
especially like you said, you're one advisor. Like if that's what you got to do to get the book done and have kids buy in, like I understand that. I mean, I would still say pull inspiration, don't copy outright. But next year you can teach them about themes in more depth and do better. Like that's okay.
yeah,
So
exactly. And you do kind of you also get to curate your staff at some point. Some do. Some have the luxury of being like, I want original thinkers and all that. So you can kind of build the program, as it were, into something that does. You can always strive to be the varsity yearbook squad, right? And be competitive and win awards and all that stuff. And that's why people like Katie Marino exist, is to help you get to that next level. But there, for every one of those, there's 100 that just need to make their book and just need to sell it and keep the business afloat, keep the program sustainable, and hopefully profitable, and not the we don't want to eliminate or erode the history keeping part of the school, like the document that keeps the history of the school. If that goes away, if that's not solvent, then there's just these dark holes in the history of the school. How else was it kept? Was there a school newspaper? Was it? Are we going to look through old broadcasts from the student broadcast? How are we going to know what happened to that school 100 years from now? So yeah, I think it's what you're doing as an advisor is super important. How you do it is a lot flexible to get to that
That's
end goal.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost actually out of time. This actually went by really fast, but I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you. Okay, the first one is a little bit about cover treatments. I mean, every publisher is different, but what are some cool things that staffs can do to just enhance their cover from just being kind of like straight printed, 4-color material paper?
One of the cheapest things to do, and it's different from every publisher, and you may even already have it in your contract, is just to add a varnish that is opposite from the lamination, right? So, if you're a matte book, add a little spot of gloss. Vice versa, if you're a gloss book, add a little spot of matte. Anything you can do to add perceived value and to keep these books from looking like the finish of the textbooks that kids carry around makes it feel more special, makes it feel great. My job is to make a yearbook look amazing as a flat, two-dimensional, no applications thing. My job is to make it look good for cheap. But if you've got money or if you want to try to enhance it, a varnish is a really good starting point. And then a foil stamp can be another good one. It's probably probably the next tier up. Mm-hmm. And then maybe another inexpensive one is to add a grain. A lot of people don't think about that. And I think that's because a lot of people aren't pulling inspiration from print. Like, we're not seeing a lot of printed yearbooks as much. But just putting a grain on the cover to make it feel a certain way that is different and kind of makes it feel more elevated. Those are the first 3 things I would look at easily. And they're not budget busters by any stretch of the imagination. They're pretty low key. So I would look at those, and then, obviously we can go up from there, but I would start with a gloss, or I'd start with a varnish or a foil stamp or a grain, and see if that kind of gets you just a little bit of a bump for hopefully not a lot of investment.
Yeah, it's usually pretty affordable to add one of those treatments. Okay, opposite side of the spectrum, say we have a school in cover country and they want to go crazy with their cover, and they just want to really impress their student body. They did a lot of fundraising and they, wanted something really amazing. What are some cool things that you've seen schools do that are a splurge, but worth it?
Man, a really good die cut, that's a setup and a reveal, not just a hole in the cover for the sake of a cover. Mm-hmm. Those always make me really happy, where you kind of zig and zag. You show the cover and then you open it up and that die cut reveals something else. Oh, that's so cool. I love that. I personally, I'm not in the demographic. I'm not a high school student, so this is probably not the most popular, but I love a specialty material, like an iridescent material or a metallic material or just something, because when you print a book, they basically run it through the same press that your pages are on. But if you get a special material that no one else is going to have, that you can't even visualize when you see it on Pinterest, but you get this material that, maybe it changes color when you look at it in certain light or whatever. Oh, I love that. And putting embossing on those is just so cool. Yeah. That makes me really happy, and it really makes it
you can feel
table book. Yeah, it's tactile and it's visual, and I'm the first to admit, on a computer screen when you're in your cover appointment, it looks so boring. It's just a flat color and it's just text and it doesn't look
it comes to life
at all. But when you get it done, then it's oh man, that's amazing. But you just can't, you have to see that to trust that it's going to happen. You can't take my word for it. Anytime I advise that, I'm try it before you buy it. But I would do this, but your mileage may vary.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so you mentioned die cuts and how they reveal, and so you kind of touched on end sheets. Is that something that you typically have time to design during the cover session? Because sometimes they match the cover, and they're professionally designed as well. Or what do you advise for end sheet design?
So I almost never have time to do an end sheet. And the reason for that is because if you design the cover and you are figuring out your font and your graphic element and your color palette and all that stuff, we're doing a lot in that hour. let's extrapolate that to the end sheet. When we design your end sheet, I personally feel like that table of contents that might be on your end sheet should also kind of be the folio,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a wayfinding system, right? It's like your little nav bar. So I
Right.
always try to make sure that the table of contents is going to be a worthy folio if they want that. And in doing that, like that's its own little design piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course there's copy there. Like we have to, if you're doing section spinoffs, if you've got them ready, maybe like we could save some time there, but we still have to typeset each one of those.
Right.
So have to get the page numbers. So that's always another design project in and of itself. If you want it done well, if
Right.
you want if you want something thrown in with some page numbers and all that, then I can. You could also probably do that.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need me. However, since I exist to make your job easier and not harder, if that's easier and better and it's just another thing off your to-do list, absolutely. But if you're hoping to get a cover and end sheet out of a 1 hour cover session, I'm gonna I'll disappoint you now rather than during the
Yeah.
session. Don't do
Probably not.
it.
Yeah.
Probably not. Yeah.
Makes sense. So do you see most schools designing cover sheets because or cover end sheets? Cover sheets. What's a cover sheet? End sheets because sometimes I see a lot of schools don't even know that they can do that, especially new advisors. They're used to just kind of white because people can sign them because I think traditionally that's how it was. But
Yeah.
I love when I see designed cover sheet or end sheets. What am I saying? What's a cover sheet? End sheets.
Yeah. There are costs involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those. If you pick a white paper, the plant's not going to charge you for the white paper. But if you want to run that piece of paper through a press, they're going to charge you for that. And so for some schools, there's just not the budget to do it. And so you make signing books a tradition, and then you
Yep.
justify
And
why
that
you
works.
don't design an end sheet. So it really is budget dependent.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you can, you should, because you can enhance your book that much more, and you can allocate that space for table of contents and save that space for coverage inside the book and things like that. So yeah, I definitely would if it's in the budget and you're already printing it or whatever. But if you can't, I mean, here's the thing, like, and I say this about all kinds of aspects of the design process with the yearbook. When you hand that book out, no student is going to look at it and be like, oh, how come they didn't design the end sheets?
Right.
They don't think that
They
way.
don't
They look
know.
at it
They
and
don't even care.
go, let me find a picture of me and let me find a picture of the person I have a crush on. That's the thought process. They don't look at it and scrutinize the decisions that you've been making for the last 9 months. That doesn't happen.
Right. And they don't know yearbook world. Like they don't know the theme, they don't understand it. So,
Yeah,
don't beat yourself up about not having some certain aspect or element. So,
absolutely not. No,
yeah, makes
they want a
sense.
book and they want it on time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, last question. What is one of your like favorite either concepts or covers? And it might not be one, maybe it's more of like a general thing, but like when you are designing a cover or like what's something you're just like you just love to do? Like your favorite project.
I love it when a school comes up with it, and it's not easy to do, but I love it when a school comes up with an idea that is so proprietary that they are the only school that could possibly do it. And in that way, like they're teaching me a little something about their school, right? Like, anyone can equate themselves to Netflix or whatever, but when a school comes up to like, it's the one that comes to mind is really old. But it was Bel Air High School in Houston, Texas. I'm gonna go ahead and call them out
Yeah.
because it's that fresh in my brain. This was a long time ago, but it was their volume 52. They were
Oh, wow, specifics.
because they were volume 52. They are the Cardinals, and they were getting new construction. And their theme was shuffled, and the book came with a deck of cards that was proprietary. So you have 52 cards in a deck, right? The Cardinals, they are the cards, and they're shuffled.
Oh, that's cool.
You can't get much more proprietary. Like no one else could do that. And I love those kinds of projects where it's just like, yeah, let's make it something that we're going to do one of these and no one can copy it. And you guys hopefully you're going to win all kinds of awards for this. Hopefully everyone recognizes the work that went into coming up with that theme. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
But then other than that, I love making things dirty and grungy and gritty. Like I love making things look super expensive for no money. I love making things look crazy and like seeing something different every time. Like The
Yeah.
best possible experience for me is when children cry when they watch the book and they see how when it see it like almost finish and they start crying because they like it so much. That's
Oh
when I'm
yeah.
like, that's my favorite right there.
Stephen Williams, the cover artist, makes kids cry.
I
That's the
love when I
headline.
make children cry. Absolutely. Yeah, put that in the thumbnail. I'm totally fine with
There
that.
you go. That's so funny. Well, that's awesome. I think that has been super helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. I know this is the busiest time of year for you, so I really appreciate you taking the time because I know a lot of advisors, when they get the job, they're like, okay, cool, I can help kids design stuff, write stuff. Then they learn about printing and deadlines and all the different parts of a yearbook. And the cover can be a really stressful part of it, especially even if they have a cover artist that they're working with or they come to you, like they don't know how to do it. And so I hope this has been helpful to kind of walk you through the process. And I would love to chat with you again if we have more details, maybe later when your schedule comes down a little bit, because I'm sure we could just talk about covers for hours and hours.
It's
So,
literally my job. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I would love to. Katie, you are absolutely a delight. I am so happy to be part of this whole series. This is so cool.
of course. I'm
And I
excited. Thank
am
you.
very grateful for the opportunity to just talk shop for a little while. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. So to wrap up, where can people find you?
They can go to my website, which is thecoverartist.com. There are covers to look at, and there's a contact sheet. So if you want to fill out a contact form to start the process of booking an appointment, you absolutely can. That's kind of how you unlock the scheduler. So you fill out a contact form, and then you will get an automated response from my army of robots that will send you the link to book an appointment if you are so inclined. So that's the best way to get in touch with me. And then I'm occasionally on Instagram and things like that. So if you want to look on social media, I think my Instagram is Cover a Day. I'm not sure. We'll link that in the notes
Yeah,
below. But
I'll be sure to link all your things down below
but
so
yeah, and
people can
actually,
find
the
you.
best place is probably Pinterest. Like that's I as much as I say don't go to Pinterest for
I know. It's like
inspiration.
you
If you
just
want to
said, don't
see
do
if you
that.
want to see my stuff, go to Pinterest
Yeah.
because there's not a cap on how many images I can put on that. So it's just a lot of stuff.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
And
kind
it's
of all
really
over.
great to just look for inspiration because you have so many great designs up there from past years that, just people can look through and see different concepts and themes and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
definitely check
there's
out.
definitely something for everyone up there, and at the very least, you can look at it and realize what you don't want, and if
Mhm.
that can start a conversation. So
Come with your not list.
come up with your not list
Yeah.
exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.